All right, welcome everybody. It is early January, and here on Lanier today we had temperatures nearly 70 degrees. Water temps are in the low to mid 50s, occasionally in the very high 40s, like 49 and change, depending on what graph I'm looking at. And it's January. So what does that mean? I'm going to pick up kind of where I left off as far as baits from December. So I'm going to cover some of that. And this is just an assortment of what I think I will likely be throwing at some point in time in January. So January historically is cold, but if you get a big warm front there towards the end, fish can go shallow. Fish are relatively shallow now, so you could theoretically be fishing anywhere from 6 inches of water to 65 plus feet of water, and air temperatures from 25 degrees to 70 degrees and pretty much anything in between, and it can switch on almost a day-to-day basis. So what does that mean? It means if you're a junk fisherman, this is not a bad time of the year for you because you can do an awful lot of stuff. So this is an assortment of things that I will have relatively available, if not on my deck, through the entire month, depending on the weather conditions and what's going on. So the first thing I'm going to do is start off where I left off, and then I'll add in the things that I'm going to be adding over the course of the month. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about yet again is a 2.8 on a guppy head. So this is, again, it's fished in the ditches, but another place where it's fished a lot of people don't think about is on the gentle sloping rock and clay banks that a lot of times the same places you would throw a crankbait. When the conditions are not right as far as wind and or sun, a lot of times you can catch those fish just crawling this down the same banks you would typically throw a crankbait down. So this is the 2.8. I do well with it when the water is, let's call 48 degrees and above is when I prefer to throw this. Again, as far as colors goes, electric shad is number one, Tennessee shad, and gizzard shad are my top, rounding out the top three. Again, I throw this on a 3/8 ounce head unless I'm throwing it real shallow, and then I'll go down. The next on the list, which may come into play for me in January, is the Cast Prodigy. So this is a 3-inch bait. This bait has a tighter action as far as the tail goes. So it's not as you can see the tails here, one's droopy, one's not. I have had my best luck on a Cast Prodigy when the water temps have gotten down in the mid to high 40s, and even colder than that in the event that it ever gets there. I rigged this on a 3/8 ounce queen tackle tungsten head. I prefer that particular head because of the type plastic it is. It actually holds it very well. I do not like the way this bait performs on a guppy head. So this is absolutely one of those deals where the head matches with the bait and it just works extremely well. Again, I prefer this when the water temp's in the mid 40s, maybe the upper 40s. Another way that you can rig this is actually on a straight shank number 1 or 1/0 worm hook, and actually put it on a drop shot and then just swim it, about 6 or 8 inches off the bottom, and that can be productive with this as well. I've done that in the past with a lot of success. The other thing that I want to combine both of these baits with that can come into play, and it will come into play for me more as we go in later on into the winter and even in early spring, is the spot choker. And I'm going to throw this on a 3/8 ounce, maybe even a 1/2 ounce, with preferably a 2/0 hook because I want a little bit smaller, particularly on these smaller baits. And this is something I can throw a suspended fish. I can swim it over the top of standing timber. And then late in January, when fish are suspending under docks, this can be a phenomenal bait to target some of those fish with. So suspended fish, fish above timber, that's when I like to use it. I personally do not like to crawl this on the bottom, although it can be very effective crawled on the bottom, and can on some days outfish the straight ball head or the guppy head. So that is something that I have easily accessible in January as well. Moving on next to the overlap with the previous is our old War Eagle spoon. This is a 1/2 ounce chrome. I use white, and I use gold depending on the conditions. Gold in the dirtier water, white in clouds, chrome in the clean water. Right now, the lake is probably the cleanest that I have seen it at this time of the year that I can remember in the last 4.5 years. So 4 Mile Creek, which is usually a mud bath, is absolutely, it's clean as it can be. The main lake has areas with 12 foot of visibility, so the spoon is going to work. I'm really going to use this probably in 30 feet of water or deeper. I do not have much success at all targeting fish less than 30 feet of water right now. Moving on, this is something that came into play towards the end of January. It's still in play now, and it's in play rigged multiple ways. And this is the 5-inch Trickster Tamale. This is in the green pumpkin green. If you haven't ever seen one of these, imagine a 5-inch Cinco and a 5-inch Zoom Finesse worm had a kid. That's what you end up with. So it's a smaller profile than the Cinco, a bigger profile than a Finesse worm, but they're both 5 inches, and it is, I've caught a gazillion fish on Lanier on this time of year. It's hard to bait. It's a durable bait. It works well. These will be available on a website sooner than later, I have been told, so we'll see when that's coming. But green pumpkin green and sweet baby candy are the two, my two go-to colors, and then green pumpkin blue can also be very productive. Green pumpkin purple can be productive. You see where I'm going. Green pumpkin with some glitter, and then sweet baby candy. As far as rigging these, a 1/4 ounce shaky head is a phenomenal way to rig it. Another thing you can do is Nico rig this with a 1/16 ounce nail weight in the nose. That works really well as well. And you could also throw this on a Carolina rig. We're getting to the point in time, late in January, I've had success throwing this on a Carolina rig in ditches as well. So there comes a point in time with some of the ditch fish that they stop eating the minnow baits and they really want something just stuck in front of their nose and left there. And that's where this comes into play. You can target an individual fish. You can let this sit on the bottom, let its tail do its thing, just kind of woggling back and forth. And a lot of times if you just dead stick it with very light little twitches, they will hit it. Then you can also transition and throw this up on rock and clay on sunny afternoons. You can target fish in and around docks, so forth and so on. Lastly, in the soft plastics thing is a Ned rig. So this is an electric shad Yamamoto little Ned. I forget exactly what it is. It's their Ned bait. This is another one that you can target those fish that are down in the ditches that are very lethargic. You drop it right on their head and you just leave it there and let it sit there and wait. So I've had a lot of success with that the last 2 years in January and February. Moving on to more casting type powers type baits. The first one I'm going to cover is a Rock Crawler 55, I believe. This one is in a Hammond's Fishing Custom. It's got a blue bottom with a brown back crawl pattern. Anything that's in a crawl pattern / red pattern will oftentimes work this time of the year. Particularly as we go through, this is something I'll throw early in the mornings, and then I'll throw it in the afternoons on sun-beat banks with wind as well. So those are the two areas where I'm going to throw this mostly. Rock and clay early in the mornings, and then sun-beat 45-degree angle, south or west facing banks in the afternoons, preferably with wind. This, you can target fish with forward-facing sonar and hit them with this, or you can just blind cast it down the bank. My general retrieve is fast enough to get it to make contact with the bottom. I do not speed retrieve this, speed crank it. I let it get down to the bottom, and then I just main contact with the bottom as much as I can. So when possible, parallel the bank. If not, 45-degree angle it. It's best to do when you're by yourself. If you're not by yourself, then back off and just try to keep it, both you and your partner, keeping it on the bank as much as possible. So that Rock Crawler 55 in some sort of a crawl or red pattern works well. The next thing, when fish start suspending up in the water column, is the old jerkbait. So when water starts to warm towards the end of the month, and even right now because we're in some warm water, there's fish suspended oftentimes in the first 10 feet of the water column up over maybe a 30 or 40 foot bottom even. And a jerkbait is a great way to target those individual fish. Why? I can get it right above them. I can pause it, and then I can play cat and mouse with it. It works really well. I've had some really good days on it. It's not the first thing I'm going to pick up, but it can be very effective. This is also something that as we get later into the spring or start to get closer to the spring and start to get closer to the pre-spawn, this will come into play in the backs of pockets, on points, around marina walls, and can be very effective in all of those areas. Lastly, I want to cover something. We should start getting some rain here, hopefully, which means we're going to start getting some dirty water And this is very effective in areas where you find dirty water pouring into the lake, and that would be some sort of a jackhammer in a shad pattern or even a fire crawl pattern, depending on how muddy the water is. Even black and blue will work too as well. So this is just a 3/8. Actually, this is a 3/4. A half will work. Those will allow you to get them a little bit deeper down into the water column. But when I have that fresh, dirty water pouring in that may be warmer than the water itself is, that's pulling bait fish in, pulling fish back, this can make a lot of racket and draw fish through that dirty water and get hit. As far as putting on the back of it, I'll cut down a cast Nova and put on the back, or I'll go put our old buddy, the old Prodigy, or the Kitech on the back, and have had success with that as well. The other place this will work is along riprap roads where they have built a road across the lake and basically cut the back of the creek off, and there is a pond on one side of the road. The lake is on the other side of the road with a culvert in the middle. When you get current throwing through that, the water is often dirty. That's where this comes into play, and as well as the rock crawler often comes into play in that situation as well. So that is kind of where my mind is thinking, and some of the stuff I'm going to be rotating through the course of January. We can have water temps all over the place, air temperatures all over the place, so it's kind of a junk fishing deal. I know what I'm going to try to do is probably still stick primarily with soft plastics, be it a Finesse swim bait or the worm or the Nico rig, but I also have the more power fishing techniques when I get those very specific conditions that I'm looking for to throw those. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. If not, I'll be back here towards the end of the month with a wrap up on what worked well and what I'm going to be looking for moving into February. So thanks for the support, and see you soon.